I think 25 felt less scary than 30, if I'm completely honest, because for some reason, and I've talked to so many women on my podcast about this, I think women are so afraid of turning 30. I think we're told that, like, basically we have until 35 to have children, and then that's a wrap for us. And so I think 25, you're like, okay, I still have a shot at things. But 30, if you're not with someone and you don't like, I don't if I decide to have kids, like, I don't know who the father of my children is gonna be right now. I really don't, and if you think about it, you have to date, you have to get engaged, you have to get married, then you have the kid, like, that those are a lot of things that to accomplish.
I am so excited and so grateful to have my next guest on. I had the pleasure of being a guest on her podcast and very much enjoyed being in the other seat. I'm joined today by Julia, whose podcast is pretty much done. So it's role reversal today. Now I get to ask you the questions, but it's been so amazing to be connected to you in so many ways. I think in a lot of ways we have similar mindsets and frameworks, and the work that we're doing is so similar. So I was really excited when you reached out to have me on your podcast, and that was such an amazing experience, and very grateful that you are joining me now here today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I felt very inspired after our conversation. You really amped me up to freeze my eggs. I haven't done it since, but it definitely left the thought in my mind. So, super grateful that you were on and super grateful to be on today.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of my questions, and maybe we can just jump in there and just kind of like roll with the conversation and see where it goes. I appreciate that you felt that way about the conversation. I know some other women, like new to their 30s or very fresh in their 30s, have different thoughts on having that conversation or being ushered in that conversation so early. So I'm curious to hear from you. It sounds like you feel a little bit differently, like that you appreciate those type of conversations.
For sure. I mean, I think that 10 years ago, we weren't able to have those conversations. I was just speaking to someone last night, and she's a 26-year-old woman, and we were talking about kids. And she said, I don't know. I'm hoping that I find a partner that I want to have kids with, but I'm not sure. And I won't be devastated if I don't have kids. And I think that it's a privilege to be able to get to say that, because I don't think that 10 years ago as women, we were able to say those things and feel as independent as we do and feel as content saying those things. And obviously we talked about on my podcast, I'm not sure where I land on wanting kids, but I like the idea of potentially freezing my eggs so that I have the option one day and don't have regrets and wonder what if when that time comes, when my biological clock is obviously ticking. And so yeah, I feel lucky to be in that place.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's about like, yeah, the conversations we're able to have today and the options we're able to have today, or even just like the normalization of these options are so important. And I shared this with you when I was on your podcast. Like these conversations are so important for that reason, because, the journeys don't always look like, the linear path that we were told or we were sold. So it's so nice to be able to have these conversations, sort of destigmatize some of these things. Um, so within that vein, can you share more about you? I want to talk, you just made this big move. I want you to share all of it with the audience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talk about the journey of the traditional path not panning out. That is, I think, like me in a nutshell. So, obviously, I've shared with you and on social media, I've shared that I'm Russian Jewish. And traditionally, Russian Jews or Jews get married young. My entire life, I was told get married, have kids, find a husband. And I kept trying to do that because I watched everyone around me do it. My mom, my parents got married. My mom was 21, my dad was 22. My mom had two kids by the age of 25. And I just thought that's what I have to do. I remember my seventh grade English teacher asked me, like, what does my future look like? And I told her, I'm going to have two kids when I'm 25. And that very much didn't happen for me. So I kept finding myself trying to find this family. I was trying to create follow the same path that so many people around me were following and my mom had done and my sister had done. And I kept finding myself in these relationships feeling very deeply unfulfilled. And these people just weren't my people. And I realized throughout this whole ordeal, throughout the process of online dating and finding myself in so many different relationships, I was trying to find fulfillment in someone else. And I was anchoring a lot of my value and self worth on someone else so that I could tell everyone around me, look, I did what you told me to do. I did it. I accomplished that end goal. And so I went on this journey, and in COVID, I found myself in a really toxic relationship. I found myself listening to podcasts and feeling a lot less alone in that relationship. And I listened to this one podcast episode with Mariana Hewitt. She had the celebrity hairstylist Jen Atkin on. And Jen Atkin shared with her that she tells all of her friends who are in bad relationships or relationships they don't want to be in, that it just takes one weekend of moving your stuff out, and that's it, and it's just one weekend and you rip the Band-Aid off. And I remember walking around and I was like, okay, that stuck with me. That hit. It's so I just need one weekend and this could all be over and I could basically get my freedom back. And I did it. It wasn't exactly in that moment, but I did it shortly thereafter. And I felt so free from that relationship, wondering why I stuck in that relationship. And I also thought to myself, if I can be that moment of clarity for someone else, if I can tell them on a podcast not to settle, if I can tell them my story, share different stories of people who have gotten through these situations where they thought that they were going to settle, I want to be that moment of clarity for someone else.
I love that. Wow.
Yeah, and so that's really what led me to start my podcast and led me to start Pretty Much Done and all of the social media content that I share, because I think that so many people are afraid of the ticking time clock, especially for women, B, not following the traditional rules that society tells us, C, starting over. And I just think that life is so short. And when we look at our tombstone, it's not going to say, Julia was in these many relationships, or Julia was single at the age of 30, or Julia didn't have kids. It's gonna talk about how I made people feel and the relationships that I have around me. And that's really where my quality of life is at.
Yeah. I love that moment of clarity for you. And I love that it grew you to do, like, it grew this podcast, right? Out of that came this podcast. And what's so incredible is I have more guests on, I have more conversations. So much of the work, if people are working in this space, it's born out of their own experience, and it's born out of this desire to help and share. And maybe, I said earlier, like, if I can save one little heartbreak or hard moment for somebody, I want to do that. And I want to pay it forward in a way that, maybe I didn't have, because I didn't know people that were egg freezing when I was doing that. So I love that. And I love that your podcast was born from that moment. That's amazing. And it's so helpful. I want to back up to 25, right? So if this is sort of the timelines that were told to you, like, emotionally, can you share more emotionally about how you felt when you didn't meet those milestones, like where you weren't, married and with two children at 25?
I think 25 felt less scary than 30, if I'm completely honest, because for some reason, and I've talked to so many women on my podcast about this, I think women are so afraid of turning 30. I think we're told that, like, basically we have until 35 to have children, and then that's a wrap for us. And so I think 25, you're like, okay, I still have a shot at things. But 30, if you're not with someone and you don't, like, I don't if I decide to have kids, like, I don't know who the father of my children is gonna be right now. I really don't. And if you think about it, you have to date, you have to get engaged, you have to get married, then you have the kid, like that. Those are a lot of things that to accomplish, and they feel very overwhelming. And so I think that I had to grapple with the fact of, I feel like I'm letting people down by not having found someone. And being Russian Jewish, like, it was reiterated to me, unfortunately, culturally. It's just like, you're a therapist, people are doing their best. I don't have resentment towards them for making comments. Like, people will make comments that, like, why are you still single? Have you found anyone? Are you dating someone? And that breeds a lot of pressure. So I think that it took me a really, really long time to get content with where I'm at. And I think that it took those good on paper, lackluster relationships and being in them and seeing how deeply unfulfilled I was to understand that it's better to be alone and better to be single than to be really lonely in a relationship.
Because that's a real thing. Like it, and yeah, it's a real thing to feel alone in a relationship, and it is not this marker of success in the way that people tell you it is. Like it doesn't, solve everything when you meet these milestones, right? So if there's unresolved trauma, if there's, other things going on internally, that you haven't healed or worked on, meeting the partner is not going to solve all of those things. Having the baby is not going to solve all of those things. And so I think it's really sold to us that it is these markers of success and happiness and fulfillment. And then when you find yourself in those places and you're like, well, wait, I'm not, what? Like, I'm not totally fulfilled. It's confusing. So I think it's helpful to, like, again, be having these conversations to say it's not everything.
Totally. And I think that now, like in retrospect, the dots connect, right? I can see that the journey of it all is fueling me towards my purpose. So, yes, I had so many relationships that didn't work out, and I went on so many dates, and now I understand that I have this message that I want to help share with other people. And it was through those experiences and me experiencing those things that I can help relate to people, because I can tell them I've been in the trenches. I've been on the online dates. I've been ghosted. I've been in the relationships. I've experienced heartbreak. And so I understand that it's like through the journey that I'm really finding myself, instead of through a relationship or getting married or having kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we talked about this when I came onto yours because, the space is new to me. I wasn't a huge Instagram social media person before the podcast, but I feel very passionate about these messages and getting, these conversations out there and normalizing and honoring all these journeys. And you caught some pretty hard flack for one of your posts, which I think just got totally misunderstood. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you dealt with it. It was pretty harsh.
Yeah. So what happened to me is, obviously I have the podcast where I interview wonderful people, and I also have a bit of like a social media presence. I mean, at the time I had like 7,000 followers, but I was just trying to create TikToks to build awareness for the podcast. And so I started creating content sharing what my life is like as a girl who is 29 and single. I'm 30 today, but I was 29 at the time. And so I made this video kind of mindlessly. I had gone to the Beyonce concert the night before. I had a couple drinks with friends. I woke up in the morning. I didn't get out of bed until 10 a.m. And sometimes I'll guilt myself about being in bed till 10 a.m., but I don't have kids. And I was a little hungover, and I decided I really want to make shakshuka because I had been watching Real Housewives of New York and they had been talking about shakshuka. And so I make this video and I talk about it. And I say, whenever I'm really hard on myself for not being where society tells me to be, that I should be, I remind myself how easy my life is. I get to wake up at 10 a.m. I get to just decide today I'm going to go to the grocery store and get a recipe for shakshuka. And so it was just like a reminder for myself and for single people that, sure, maybe you haven't found the guy, but you get to do all of these wonderful things. And so this political commentator named Matt Walsh, he took that and tweeted it to his 2 million followers on Twitter, and basically called my life meaningless. He said I was too stupid to realize how meaningless my life was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like the playing field wasn't fair. Like I'm just like a new creator with 7,000 followers. He's got 2 million, obviously a riled up fan base, and they just started attacking me in my TikTok comments. And the way I describe it to many people is, imagine you're in your bedroom, you just woke up, and like 500 people just bulldoze into your door and start attacking you and saying all of these really mean things about you. I mean, the commentary varied from questions about my gender because of the size of my skull, saying that I should be sexually assaulted, that the only way I would have a kid is if,
God.
yeah, yeah. They said that I would only have a kid if one of them sexually assaulted me. Stu Just really, really horrible things. I don't even know like the full extent of what's been said, but those are the things that have been relayed to me or I've passively seen. So immediately delete TikTok, because I just, as someone who is well versed in therapy, I understand my boundaries now. And so I delete the app from my phone. I go to the beach with my friend and my cousin. We had plans to go watch the sunset. I knew I had to do like my meditative practices. I just had to kind of regroup. But this was something I'm not familiar with and the first time experiencing anything like it. And I went home. I heard from old friends who have Twitter. I didn't even have Twitter at the time. They said, "Are you okay?" Because it was trending all over Twitter. My face was everywhere. And they said, just, it's going to be okay. Just like keep your head down. And an old friend from college who has a little bit of a social media presence on Twitter ended up tweeting in defense of me and giving some more explanation as to what my platform is about, why I created this kind of content. And once she did that, the tide really turned. I woke up in the morning. Yeah, like Mark Cuban came to my defense, and it was really like it started to reach the people that I had intended for it to reach. And by no means did I intend to insult people with children. I think it's wonderful to have children. I was just sharing what my experience is like. And I am someone who has constantly been hard on herself for not reaching certain milestones. And it was just a reminder to myself that my life is easier in ways that mothers don't have that ease. They don't have that privilege of having the ease of my life. And, mothers have meaning in their life that I don't have and I can't experience. But this is just my lens and my point of view. And so it ended up being good in the end. It ended up being a good thing because it started to reach sort of the hands of people who feel this way. And what it made me realize is that for so long, I thought that this was a cultural thing. I thought I have this traditional culture that I grew up in, and this is just a Jewish Russian thing. Or, even like I know you're Italian, like this might just be a traditional cultural thing, but I realize it's very prevalent in US culture. Someone like Matt Walsh, who lives in the Midwest, feels this way. Someone like Candace Owens, who called me a stupid bitch, a selfish bitch, feels this way. If I don't have children, my life has no meaning. I have people constantly telling me that they're investing in cat food because of me. I don't even like cats. But this is the way people feel about single women who are over the age of 30. And so I realize it's very, very prevalent, and people are very judgmental if you don't have if you choose not to have kids. You're like a societal leper. And so my content is really speaking to people and meeting them where they're at and telling them it's totally okay to live life as you see fit. And whatever gives you fulfillment and meaning in your life is your business and wonderful.
I love that. Yeah. And that's like the messages we're trying to convey too, is that there is nothing wrong with you if you choose a different path. If you haven't arrived at a milestone at a certain time, there is nothing wrong with you at all. And I love the intention of that content, which is to remind women to focus on what is good in your life, right? And know where the trap that I got stuck in, and I think we talked about this on your podcast, is there were so many moments that I focused on what I didn't have yet, and it completely overshadowed all the things that I have. So it's really just this reminder to be grateful for what you have right now. And it's like to see it completely blown up in a way and perceived in a way that was not at all what you intended is really unfortunate. But I think it speaks to, there's still, stigmas about women that don't want to have children. There's still stigmas about women that are 30 something and not married, or, I'm not married, and people might have, and I'm, in my relationship for 8 years and we have a child together. My people might have issues on that, but it is about, it's your life. It's no one else's business, and whatever, fulfills you or whatever you choose. And I think that's what gets so hard, is that a lot of these messages are so ingrained and have been so ingrained for so long that even as someone that doesn't fully buy into them, it's still a lot of work. And I'm curious to hear from you, like how you stay grounded in where you are now and trying to drown out that noise. Because even when you don't buy into those things, I think, and I can speak for myself, like you can kind of get like pulled that way sometimes. And kind of having to always come back and be grounded and like, no, this is my timeline. This is my journey. And I want to kind of hear how you do that for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting timing because a couple days ago I posted a TikTok saying that I was struggling with being single, and I had just come off of like a 2-month journey of feeling really content. I mean, this happened a few months ago, the Matt Walsh saga, and I felt more and more fulfilled in my life and deeply rooted in my message of being single. However, I'm human, and I think that human connection is a human need. People people are just humans crave connection. We want to be with someone. We crave intimacy. And sometimes, because healing isn't linear, I have days or weekends or weeks where I struggle with it and I feel a little lonely. I just moved to a new city, so I have everyone I'm meeting are new people. I don't have my same comforts and I don't have my family here, and so it can get lonely, especially when you don't have a partner to be emotionally intimate with, physically intimate with, all of those things. However, something that grounds me and I just know, because I have become a deeply spiritual person, that what's meant for me won't miss me, and I know that I am going to meet someone. I'm a wonderful person. I do all of these wonderful things in my life. I know that that person is coming in the timing that he's meant to come in, and once it happens, it's going to be wonderful. I just had someone on my podcast, Shani Silver, and she had this really wonderful message of, remind yourself that love is all around you. You have a partner you've been with for 8 years. I had just gone to a wedding a couple weeks ago where my friends are deeply in love and had this wonderful wedding. We see love happen all the time. And I know that it's going to happen for me. So in the meantime, I have to remind myself to do things that really fill up my cup. I know those things for me now. I call it like my nourishment menu.
I love that.
Yeah, I know that I can always fall back on these things whenever I'm feeling a little down. So I love walking in sunshine. So here I live in Austin now. There's a lake. I walk it whenever I'm feeling a little down. If I want to pick me up, I get myself an $8 latte. I meditate, I do yoga, I see friends. I just know that I have these resources available to me to fill my own cup whenever I'm feeling down. Does it helps for sure. Does it cure everything? No, but usually with time everything passes. I mean, I felt that way 2 days ago, and my best friend's coming to town in 2 days, and I know we're going to have the best weekend ever. So it's just like an up and down thing, but I know I'm so certain that what's meant for me won't miss me, and I know I'm going to find my person.
I love that. I love that saying. And I think having those little nuggets top of mind are so helpful, especially in those moments when you're feeling more down. Someone had said to me the other day, and this has stuck with me, the universe is working with, just remember the universe is working with you, not against you. And I find that so helpful as well. And that's sort of these little nuggets that we can ground ourselves in. But I love the humanness and the honesty of saying, yeah, I do all these things and I have the nourishment menu, but like sometimes I have hard days. And that was my journey too. It's like there were days that I could really lean into gratitude and be really happy with what I had and where my life was at. And then there were days where like, damn, I'm lonely. So I think that's important to share too, that like, yeah, you can do all those things, but there are going to be those days that are harder, and that's okay too. And not to like beat yourself up for it if you have those type of days.
Yeah, and to your point about the universe working with you, I know that the universe works with me more often when I am living in gratitude and abundance, and when I am living in lack and I'm thinking, why did that happen for her? Why isn't that happening for me? My life sucks. This sucks. I hate being single. The universe is like, okay, she's not ready. She's totally not ready for her person. Cause how are you gonna meet someone when you're feeling so shitty about life? Like no one wants to be around that energy. So I try and reboot myself and remember the things that I do have and remember the wonderful life I do lead. And so I think that the universe really works in your favor when all of those things are in play.
Yeah, and it's such a helpful reminder to pour into those things, because those are the things like, regardless of what's happening around you, most of the times you have somewhat of control of. Like you can do your walks and you can do your meditation and you can make sure you prioritize those things. And those are things that you can continue to pour into that can't be taken from you. And funny story, I might have shared this with you already, but like I found myself in that place of real gratitude and real acceptance and pride where my life was. Like I was kind of like, this is great. I can kind of like, I have my little condo and feeling really grounded in that. And then I met Rob a month later. So I think that is just so true what you said. Like when you're in that space of abundance and gratitude, like more things are flowing your way. I love that. I love that. Well, I do want to talk about this move to Austin because I think it's so amazing. And, we talk a lot about fear and how fear gets in the way and like taking risks and sort of, charting your own path, which you've clearly done, and you just made this big move. So I want you to share about that. I want you to share like the decision that went into that, maybe some fears you had to move through to kind of like go for it.
Yeah. It's maybe the one of the scariest things I've done probably in my life so far, but I also it wasn't that hard of a decision. Like it all kind of like fell into place, but definitely scary and risky. So, I'm from LA, born and raised. I lived in London for grad school, but otherwise never really left. And I had been feeling a bit stuck there. Bought a condo, I think like 7 years ago now, and I'd been living in the same like single girl condo for a bit. And I didn't have any outdoor space. I had my little place. Obviously with COVID, we work from home. I felt like I was the way that I can say it is like I felt suffocated in there. I was like, if I didn't leave, if I wasn't leaving the house, like I would just like leave my bedroom, go to my office, and maybe take a walk during the day. I was trying to get out to coffee shops. My office was a bit far from home, but it was always available to me, and so I just felt stuck in certain ways. And I knew I wanted a change. And I was seeing someone long distance this summer. It didn't work out. And once we ended things, I thought, my best friend lives in Austin. I had been visiting her. I feel like I could live in Austin. And so I just like went on Zillow. I popped on Zillow and I looked at short-term rentals just as like a let's just see what's out there. And I'm a true believer that like your gut knows all. So like the fact that I'm like already having these ideas pop into my mind, my gut's kind of telling me, right? So I get on Zillow. I look at short-term rentals. There was one that I liked, but it was a bit out of budget. So I wrote to them. It was just one that I liked, and it was no pressure. I have my place, it was all good. And I wrote to them and I said, "Hey, love your place. It's a little out of budget though. I'm super responsible. I own my own place in LA. Is there any flexibility on the price? Like, I'd be an amazing tenant." And they write me back and they said, "Hey, there's not any flexibility on the price. However, we are looking to move to LA. Where in LA do you live?"
You told me this. Amazing.
Yeah. And so I live in the area that they were looking in, and I said, "Why don't we home swap?" And we FaceTimed. I happened to have a mutual friend with these people.
God, this was totally meant to be.
Totally meant to be, and it was like because I was grappling with the decision of being with that person and then I ended things, I feel like the universe rewarded me for taking that risk and just put this into my laps. Long story short, the job that I do is remote. However, we don't have an office in Austin, and so HR did not allow me to still work at that company. And my first feeling in my gut was I really want to move. Like, I feel like personally I need to move. However, I have a really great paying job and this is a lot of security, and I'd be leaving a really well paying job. And I sat with it for a while and I took a walk, I meditated on it, and I decided I need to still go. I need this change for myself. And it's the scariest thing ever. And I sat at a coffee shop like every night and I started building a coaching program and I started reaching out to brands for brand deals. And I just thought, this is the time I need to invest in myself. Like, I don't have kids, I don't have responsibilities. If not now, when? This literally fell into my laps. And my parents think I'm crazy. They're immigrant parents who are like, "How are you leaving all of these things behind? You're going to take this risk." But I just believe that without risk, there is no reward. And the signs all kind of are pointing me here. And Beth, I've been here for a month and I feel so at ease. I'm like,
Oh, I love that. I love that.
it's great. I feel like in LA, unfortunately, there are some like stereotypes of people ask you, like, who are you? What do you do? There's so much of the industry here. There's a bit of superficiality. Here, everyone is so friendly, it takes me aback. Like, I am so taken aback by the friendliness. Yeah, I'm sure as, like, a New Yorker, you would also be very taken aback by it. People are so willing to connect, so kind. I think I keep like, I've gone on so many friend dates, I've lost count.
Oh, I love that's amazing.
Yeah, I've met people, like, on TikTok. I mean, people have been so unbelievably kind, and I just know this is where I'm meant to be, although it's scary, like, I'm soon gonna be without a job. That's really scary, especially in this economy, but things are kind of falling in my laps and showing me glimpses of the fact that I made the correct decision for myself.
I love that, and I love what you said too. There's no reward without risk, and I work with so many women that have that feeling of stuckness. Or you look around, and especially during COVID, like people were making big life decisions. And I know I worked with clients that would watch other friends make these big life decisions, and they're like, "I'm not doing anything. I'm feeling so stuck." But a lot of that is informed by so much fear, right? Fear of not, where am I going to find the income? I have this great paying job, and again, also, I think ingrained messaging. Like my father always told me, like, you get a job, you keep a job, you don't leave a job until you have another job. And so his mind has probably exploded with me because I definitely didn't do those things. But yeah, I think it's all that fear, and to move through. And there's another saying I love, that life happens on the other side of fear. And so I'm so happy for you and proud of you for making that risk and taking that leap. And even when there was like this moment of like, shoot, my job won't let me, work remotely, but like, you sat with it, and I'm going to still go. I think it'd be great for you to share. Is it the same that you worked at a dating app? Is that right? Are you still working at the dating?
So no, I worked at Tinder for 6 years.
Okay. Okay. That's
And then yeah, and then now I work at Spotify, and so I won't be working there anymore, but I still want to be in the dating space. I think that that's, like, really where I'm at, and I think, like, that's really what fuels me, and so I think I'm looking to try and keep myself in that space. Obviously, I'm still creating content. I have this confidence coaching program that I launched, and I have some clients there that I'm working with, and then just yeah, like, we're doing brand deals and creating content, but scary nonetheless.
You'll see. You'll see how much it's already paying off, right? You can say in the first month, like, you're so at ease and at peace. Like, you'll continue to see how it pays off for you. And though I know the work you're going to do with whoever you work with is going to be so impactful, because it's so obvious how impactful it's been for you, that you've been able to shift out of like this external pressure or these timelines, and just really do a lot of work to be grounded and true to yourself, and not feel the pressure. And I know when we spoke last, you were off dating apps, and I've obviously continued to follow you, and you've been doing this unattached autumn. So I'd love for you to speak to that, and what that's been like for you, if you're still off the apps, what that experience has been.
For sure. So I launched something that I called Unattached Autumn. And for me, I realized that, I mean, I worked at Tinder for 6 years. I'm not against the dating apps. However, I think for me, what I was doing with the dating apps is I was basically finding the same person in different clothing over and over again. And I was just filtering for the same person. Like, I loved like a witty response. I personally would love to be with someone Jewish. So I would just like find a Jewish guy. If like I liked like that he had travel photos, it was just like the same guy over and over again. And so I realized that the way that I was using them was not healthy for me. But I understand that dating apps do facilitate really wonderful introductions. I've met partners on dating apps, and that's been wonderful for me. So I created this challenge with myself of, okay, go meet people in real life. So I decided I was going to go take myself out to dinner, sit at a bar in discomfort twice a month. I was going to do one new thing a month, and I was not going to care about what people thought of me when I was doing it. And I did it in my first week in Austin and got a date. And the guy was someone I would never have gone out with on the apps, totally different. He was like, he was buying a boat to live on a boat, and he lived in Seattle, and he was from Louisiana, super different than things that I'm normally used to. I thought he was super interesting and wonderful and lovely, and I'm so glad that I met him, and I'm so glad he came up to me at the bar of the restaurant that I was eating at. Live update is that I re-downloaded Hinge 2 days ago because I think I've had enough time. I think I've had enough time with myself, and I think that what I was starting to do, unfortunately, was put a lot of pressure on myself every time I went out, that it was gonna be an opportunity to potentially meet someone, and I thought, "I don't want to do that to myself." It almost felt like, the way I described it or compared it is I had this, like, dry towel that I was wringing out, and it was, like, it was causing this, like, weird desperation or some kind of feelings for me that I didn't like. And so this allows for a buffer. I still am going to take myself out to dinners alone, do new things, go out with new people, but this just allows for, okay, the lack of disappointment if I don't meet someone when I'm out. Like, just in case I'm allowing myself to have this as a tool, but I don't know that it's going to be like the way I meet someone, who knows. And I'm trying to stay open minded when I look at people as well and really read what they have on their profiles.
Yeah. No, I think that's so great because I think that two things is like really tuning into what's working for you and what's not. And whether that's like, I need to take a step back from the dating apps because I'm doing it in a way that is just like repetitive or it's the same person in different clothes. So I'm going to try this other thing. And then I'm going to do this unattached autumn. And then it puts this pressure on me. And it's really about like just tuning in what's working, what's not working, and giving yourself permission to like take the pressure off or shift. And I always look at dating apps as, and they're very controversial. People have strong opinions on them, to use them, to not use them, how to use them. I like how you said it. It's like these are all different tools, and like just have an array of tools in your toolbox and don't be so dependent on one thing. I think dating apps can become, and I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are, problematic when it's the only thing you're using as a way for connection or to meet people. And that, maybe that's not totally fair to say because I know there's people that, are anxiously attached and that are not super confident out in the world. So maybe that's a little unfair to say, but I think expanding your viewpoint or your way of meeting people is helpful, and not to be too overly reliant on one thing is helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement, and I understand why maybe you mentioned that caveat of maybe it's not fair, because I understand I'm pretty extroverted, so I feel comfortable out in the world meeting people, and I know not everyone operates in that way. Um, but I think that it's also how you use the dating app. So, as I mentioned, I was just swiping on the same person over and over again. If, let's say, something as silly and superficial as you only like blondes, maybe today you're swiping on brunettes and you give yourself a challenge of, I'm going to force myself to match with someone and go on a date with someone that is not normally my type, and staying open to that.
I love that. Oh, that's such a good technique. That's really, yeah, these little challenges of, and this ability to recognize where maybe you're being too limited in your, viewpoint or who you're open to dating. So the awareness of like, okay, I only choose blonde, so let me challenge myself. And yeah, I have always said, I mean, I love meeting people in real life. I love being in real life. I wish we could be in real life right now, but this is a great alternative. A lot of the people when I was single that I had met in real life, I never would have swiped on
Yeah.
because I just had this opportunity to know them, to get to know them, to know their personalities. But I'm being real and honest. Like if I saw their picture on a dating app, I probably wouldn't have swiped. So I think the balance of both, of like being in the real world and like open to who and curious about who's out there. I've always encouraged my clients to like, now we're out of COVID and COVID was a completely different situation, but scan the room, like look around, see who's in the bar, like make eye contact. And I think there's still so much value in real life.
Yeah, I think we've lost the ability to connect. And I think that it's like I had 3 guys on my podcast. The episode comes out tomorrow, and they said that it's now become really weird to approach someone at a bar, and that's a shame. That sucks. But I know that's how you met your partner, is that he approached the table.
Oh yeah. And what, and I imagine maybe this still rings true. Like when Rob and I started first hanging out dating, like communication happened text and text only. And then I saw him calling me and I was like, oh my God, why? What, this is weird. Like, why is he calling me right now? But it was awesome. I'm like, oh my God, he picked up the phone and called me. And I remember being in a session with this is years ago, with a single guy, and he was talking about the apps and dating and communication. I was like, well, what if you called her? He goes, what? Like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, pick up the phone and call her," and it was, like, mind-blowing, but yeah, that's interesting to hear that it's even, like, escalated from that it's, like, bizarre to approach someone in a bar.
I know that this is maybe not popular opinion, but I won't go on a date with someone unless we do a phone call before. I wanna hop on a call. I think that I want to get that out of the way. And I guess it could get awkward if, like, I don't want to move forward on the date. But I really think that a phone call tells you a lot you need to know about a person. And yeah, I think it's like a mandatory thing for me at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, right? You get to decide, how you date, who you date, and yeah, and I've had a lot of clients, same thing that, especially during COVID, there was a lot of fear around those things, and like people they had to do a FaceTime first before they would like get out of the side of their bubble and go meet somebody. So I think that's perfectly, yeah. I mean, I think that's great. Those are great little, I love the little dating app challenge. I do like the phone call before the date. Any other advice you can give other women, or you've given other women in their 30s, navigating their 30s, maybe still feeling the pressure of timelines and dating, like how to, I guess, help quiet your clock, quiet the clock.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I had to do was I had to look at why am I pursuing a relationship? And I had to sit with that, and I realized that it was because I didn't fully love and accept myself. And so I was finding someone to fill that void. And so what I'd urge someone to do is to take a second and figure out what is it that I think that a partner is going to give me, and is that something that I could potentially give myself right now? And if you can sit and pour into yourself instead, I think that that is so important. And I know that there is like controversy around, can you love someone if you love yourself or not? Or I think it all starts with feeling really content where you're at. I don't think you need to fully love yourself 100%. We don't always love ourselves 100%. But I think for me, so much of my ease with being where I am was facing my shadow, doing the inner child work, journaling, meditating, yoga. For me, that really was what quieted the noise. And so, whatever that looks like for someone else, I would pursue that over trying to find someone to just fill a void within us or to be a band aid and not to face our problems. Because I think that those problems will come up later down the line. And there's no, it's okay. It's okay if you're 35, 45, 55. Life's short. And you really like, you really have to fall in love with yourself because I really think that like, how do you want someone else to if you aren't even at ease with who you are?
Yeah, and I think 100%. I love all that. I think that's such an important message, and I think what gets challenging or potentially harmful, problematic, is that when we place so much on external things or external validation, and those things, like I was having this, I had a Alana done on earlier, and we were talking about this too. When you hang your hat on a relationship or a job, and those things go, then what, right? So it's like really building the strong relationship with self, really working on internal validation first, and then the extra is just extra, and it's really, really nice.
Yeah, yeah, because when that anchor like walks away and just breaks up with you out of the blue, you're like left to pick up the pieces. But when you're anchored in who you are and you know exactly who you are and someone breaks up with you, you're like, okay, that sucked. It stung. I'm going to go through the process, but I know exactly who I am.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it just helps you also get clearer on who you're looking for when you're more clear on who you are and what you want and what you need.
Totally. There's not that murkiness. And you're like, well, I'm someone who likes doing these things and I hope that you like them too. I dated someone who hated that I watched reality TV. And when he would like leave the room, I'd turn it on. And when he'd come in, I'd like quickly turn it off. And that's insane to look back at. But now I almost say it to a fault. Like, I'm like, yep, I watch the Kardashians. I need you to know. And they're like, I just asked you. They're like, I asked you how your day was. And I'm like, no, no, but I watch the Kardashians.
You need to know that, and you need to accept that about me. Non-negotiable.
Totally.
Well, I'm so grateful to be connected to you and to have these conversations with you. And I hope to have more and more continued conversations with you. I'm so thrilled for your experience in Austin and what it's been so far. I'm so excited to see what you do in this next chapter. I know you will be so successful and so helpful to so many people through your coaching. Tell everybody where they can find you and find more information about what's next for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beth. I'm so glad we're connected as well. So, where you can find me, you can listen to the podcast. It's called Pretty Much Done everywhere where podcasts are found: Apple, Spotify. My social handles on Instagram and TikTok are PMD Pod. And you can DM me there. You can talk to me there. I respond to most messages, but really just listen to the episode. Listen to the episode with Beth. It was a really good one. And I'm super, super grateful for you having me on.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm so grateful for you for being here, for being on your podcast, for like sharing your podcast knowledge with me, as this is so new. But Listen to her podcast. She's so many amazing guests on. You have solo episodes on there that are so helpful too. So check her out. Pretty Much Done is the podcast. And I look forward to talking to you more. And I'm so happy to have had this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you like the episodes that you're hearing and you want to hear more, please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more incredible stories and tools.
When I froze my eggs at 37, I felt alone, I felt unsure, I felt confused and uncertain. And when you're considering such a big decision, feeling those ways do not feel good. So we have created a step-by-step guide to egg freezing so no one else has to feel that way. If you are considering egg freezing, if you're curious about what the process looks like or what you should be thinking about, then this guide is for you. We were really thoughtful in how we put it together. I think it's a great guide. I think it's really comprehensive and covers a lot of the things to be thinking about, to be considering, and maybe some things you didn't even realize you should be thinking about or considering. The goal is to not have anyone feel alone in this journey. So if you're thinking about this decision, sign up through our website, quiettheclock.com, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at quiettheclockpod. This is a very big decision, so I don't want anyone to feel alone in it. So if you're thinking about it, grab this guide, and you can also DM me with any questions. I'm here to support you through this decision and this journey.